Everyone talks about compound interest like it's magic. Einstein supposedly called it the eighth wonder of the world. Every financial guru mentions it within the first 5 minutes of any wealth-building video. Your parents probably mumbled something about it when you opened your first savings account. But here's what nobody tells you. Compounding feels like a complete lie for the first several years. You invest diligently, you check your accounts. The growth is pathetic. You're contributing $500 per month and your portfolio went up by what, $80 last year from actual returns? That's less than your monthly contribution. The math doesn't seem to match the hype. The magic feels more like a slow drip of disappointment. So you start wondering if everyone's been exaggerating. Maybe compound interest works for people who start with $100,000, but for normal people starting from zero, it seems like a cruel joke. You'll be dead before this snowball actually gets rolling. I felt exactly this way for years. Then I discovered something called the 8-4-3 rule. It's a simple mathematical pattern that completely changed how I understood the timeline of wealth building. Once you see this pattern, you'll never look at your portfolio the same way again. Because here's what's actually happening. Compounding isn't slow, it's backloaded. The gains are hidden in the later years, invisible from where you're standing today. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just standing at the worst vantage point to appreciate what's coming. Let me show you exactly what I mean. The 8-4-3 rule describes how long it takes to hit sequential milestones when you're investing consistently. Specifically, it reveals that reaching your first major milestone takes approximately 8 years. Doubling that amount takes only 4 additional years. Doubling it again takes just 3 more years. 8 years for the first chunk, 4 years for the second, 3 years for the third. The timeline accelerates even though your contributions stay exactly the same. This pattern emerges from the mathematics of compound growth, and it explains why so many people quit investing right before the magic actually starts working. Let me walk through concrete numbers so you can see this playing out in real terms. Imagine someone investing $10,000 per year, which breaks down to roughly $833 per month. They're earning an average annual return of 12%, which is slightly above the historical average for the stock market, but reasonable for a long time horizon. They start from zero. After 8 years of consistent investing, they've contributed $80,000 of their own money. Their portfolio has grown to approximately $123,000. The gains from compounding amount to about $43,000. Not bad, but nothing earth-shattering. Their money earned roughly 53% on top of their contributions over 8 years. Now watch what happens in the next phase. After 4 more years, at the 12-year mark, they've contributed $120,000 total. Their portfolio has grown to approximately $241,000. In just 4 years, their account nearly doubled. The gains from compounding have exploded to $121,000, now exceeding their total contributions for the first time. This is the crossover moment, the point where your money starts working harder than you do. The final phase is where things get truly absurd. After 3 more years at the 15-year mark, they've contributed $150,000 total. Their portfolio has grown to approximately $372,000. In just 3 years, their account added more value than it did in the entire first 8 years combined. 8 years to reach $123,000. 4 more years to reach $241,000. 3 more years to reach $372,000. The contribution stayed constant the entire time. The returns percentage stayed constant. The only thing that changed was the size of the base that was compounding. And that made all the difference. This is the 8-4-3 rule in action. It's not a magic formula or a hack. It's simply what compound growth looks like when you map it against real milestones. The back half of the journey delivers dramatically more value per year than the front half. Most people never see this acceleration because they quit during the first 8 years. They look at their modest gains, compare them to the hype they've heard about compounding, and conclude that either the math doesn't work or that it only works for rich people. They stop contributing, they raid their accounts for purchases, they never reach the part of the curve where the real growth happens. Understanding the 8-4-3 rule provides something incredibly valuable. It gives you a timeline. It tells you exactly when to expect the magic to kick in. It transforms compound interest from a vague concept into a concrete schedule you can actually plan around. Let me break down why this pattern exists mathematically. because understanding the mechanics helps you trust the process during the difficult early years. Compound interest growth follows an exponential curve. Exponential curves have a unique property that makes them psychologically challenging. They start almost flat, appearing linear for a long time, and then suddenly curve upward with dramatic steepness. When you're standing at year 2 or 3, looking forward, the curve ahead of you looks nearly flat. You can't see the steep part because it's hidden beyond the horizon of your current perspective. Your brain extrapolates based on what it sees and concludes that the growth will continue at this disappointing rate forever. But that extrapolation is wrong. Exponential curves don't continue at the same rate. They accelerate. Here's the key insight. In the early years, your contributions dominate your returns. If you're contributing $10,000 per year and your portfolio is worth $30,000, even a great 12% return only adds $3,600. Your contribution is almost 3 times larger than your return. The growth feels slow because you're doing most of the work. In the middle years, contributions and returns reach parity. Your portfolio might be $100,000, generating $12,000 in returns, while you contribute $10,000. The growth feels more noticeable because your money is now pulling equal weight alongside your contributions. In the later years, returns completely dominate contributions. Your portfolio might be $300,000, generating $36,000 in returns, while you still contribute $10,000. Your money is now doing more than 3 times the work you are. The growth feels explosive because your past sacrifices are finally paying massive dividends. This shift from contribution-dominated to return-dominated growth is exactly what the 843 rule captures. The first 8 years are contribution-dominated, slow and grinding. The next 4 years are transitional, with momentum building noticeably. The final 3 years are return-dominated, with your money working dramatically harder than you are. Knowing this pattern changes how you interpret the early results. When you look at your portfolio after 3 years and feel disappointed by the modest gains, you can remind yourself that you're in the contribution-dominated phase. This is expected. This is mathematically normal. The returns aren't broken. They're simply overwhelmed by the size of your ongoing contributions relative to your small portfolio base. When you start noticing that your annual returns are approaching the size of your annual contributions, you can recognize that you're entering the transitional phase. The snowball is picking up speed. The compounding is starting to pull its weight. You're approaching the knee of the exponential curve. When your annual returns exceed your annual contributions, you've crossed into return-dominated territory. Now you're playing a different game entirely. Your primary job is simply to not interfere. Don't withdraw, don't panic sell, don't interrupt the compounding machine that's finally running at full capacity. Let me show you how dramatically the timeline compresses as the portfolio grows larger. At a 12% annual return, money doubles approximately every 6 years. But this doubling time only tells part of the story because it doesn't account for ongoing contributions. When you're contributing regularly, the early doublings take longer than the math suggests because your starting base is so small. Your first $50,000 takes years because you're building mostly through contributions. Your second $50,000 takes less time because returns are helping meaningfully. Your third $50,000 takes even less time because returns are now doing most of the heavy lifting. By the time your portfolio reaches $200,000, it's generating $24,000 or more in annual returns at 12%. Adding another $50,000 might only take 2 years because returns are contributing twice as much as your deposits. By the time your portfolio reaches $500,000, it's generating $60,000 or more in annual returns. Your $10,000 annual contribution has become almost irrelevant to the growth rate. The portfolio is adding your entire annual contribution every 2 months through returns alone. This is why longtime investors often describe the later years as feeling like cheating. The numbers grow so fast that it seems like something must be wrong with the calculation. But nothing's wrong. This is simply what the back end of an exponential curve looks like when you finally reach it. The tragedy is how many people abandon the journey just before reaching this phase. Consider someone who invests diligently from age 25 to 33, accumulating around $100,000, and then stops contributing. Maybe they got discouraged. Maybe life got expensive. Maybe they convinced themselves they'd catch up later. That $100,000 will still grow through compounding, reaching perhaps $310,000 by age 50 if left alone. But compare that to someone who kept contributing through the transition phase and into the return-dominated phase. The continuous investor might have $800,000 or more at the same age. The difference isn't just the extra contributions. It's that the continuous investor captured the acceleration phase, where each dollar contributed gets multiplied most aggressively by the years of compounding that follow. The person who stopped missed the leverage that makes the whole system work. Let me introduce you to two investors who started at the same time with the same contributions. Their stories illustrate why understanding the 843 rule matters so much. Rebecca started investing at 27. She contributed $800 per month without fail, weathering the ups and downs of the market. After 8 years, at 35, her portfolio had grown to about $115,000. She felt underwhelmed. Her friends were buying houses and driving nice cars while she was funneling money into an account that didn't seem to be doing much. But she'd read about compound growth, so she kept going. By year 12, at 39, her portfolio had crossed $235,000. Something had shifted. Her annual returns were now exceeding her annual contributions. She could feel the momentum building. The account statement started surprising her on the upside rather than disappointing her. By year 15, at 42, she had $380,000. The previous 3 years had added more value than the first 8 years combined. She finally understood what everyone meant about compound interest. The magic was real. It just took 15 years to fully materialize. Marcus started at the same age with the same contribution rate. He made it 5 years before losing faith. His portfolio was around $55,000, and the growth felt painfully slow. He calculated that at this rate, he'd be ancient before accumulating anything meaningful. So he stopped contributing and redirected that money toward lifestyle upgrades. His $55,000 sat in the market and grew on its own. By age 42, 15 years after he started, that $55,000 had grown to roughly $170,000 through compounding alone. Not bad for money he'd stopped contributing to a decade earlier. But Rebecca had $380,000 at the same age. The difference was $210,000. Both started at the same time. Both contributed the same amount for the first 5 years. The only difference was that Rebecca pushed through the discouraging early phase while Marcus surrendered to it. The 843 rule would have told Marcus exactly what to expect. It would have shown him that the first 8 years would feel slow, that acceleration would come in years 9 through 12, and that years 13 through 15 would deliver explosive results. With that roadmap, he might have found the patience to continue. The 843 rule also explains why starting age matters so much, though perhaps not in the way people typically describe it. Conventional wisdom emphasizes starting early because of more time in the market. This is true but vague. The 843 rule makes it precise. Starting earlier means you reach the acceleration phase while you're still young enough to enjoy the results. Someone who starts at 25 reaches the explosive growth phase around age 40. They have decades to benefit from return-dominated compounding. Someone who starts at 40 reaches the explosive phase around age 55, with much less runway to capitalize on the acceleration. Both investors experience the same mathematical pattern, but the early starter experiences the pattern when it can do the most good. This isn't meant to discourage late starters. Even beginning at 45, you'll experience the 843 acceleration. You'll still reach a phase where returns dominate contributions. You just need to understand that the first 8 years will feel slow, and you need to push through that phase without losing faith. Let me address a psychological obstacle that derails many investors during the early years. When your portfolio is small, market volatility feels like it erases your progress. You contribute $10,000 over the course of a year, and then the market drops 8% and wipes out most of your gains. It feels like you're running on a treadmill that keeps sliding backward. This frustration is understandable, but misguided. During the contribution-dominated phase, market drops actually help you. Lower prices mean your contributions buy more shares. Those additional shares will compound for decades if you hold them. The investors who build real wealth are the ones who kept contributing during 2008 and 2009, buying shares at steep discounts. They're the ones who didn't panic in 2020 when the market crashed and recovered within months. They understood that volatility during the accumulation phase is a feature, not a bug. During the return-dominated phase, volatility becomes more significant because your base is larger. A 10% drop on a $500,000 portfolio is $50,000, which might exceed several years of contributions. This is when you want stability, diversification, and a cool head. But during the early years, volatility is your friend. It creates buying opportunities. It lets you accumulate more shares at lower prices. Every share you buy during a downturn will compound for the rest of your investing life. Reframing volatility this way helps you survive the discouraging early years. When the market drops and your portfolio stagnates, remind yourself that you're buying future wealth at a discount. The 843 acceleration phase will amplify these discounted purchases eventually. Let me give you a practical application of the 843 rule for your own financial planning. First, calculate your approximate timeline based on when you started investing seriously. If you're 3 years into consistent investing and feeling discouraged, recognize that you're not even halfway through the first phase. The slow period isn't a sign that something's wrong. It's exactly what the mathematics predict. Second, identify which phase you're currently in. Compare your annual investment returns to your annual contributions. If contributions are larger, you're in the early accumulation phase. If they're roughly equal, you're in the transition phase. If returns exceed contributions, you've entered the acceleration phase. Third, adjust your expectations based on your phase. During the early phase, focus on increasing your contribution rate rather than obsessing over returns. Your behavior matters more than your returns when the base is small. During the transition phase, focus on consistency and avoiding withdrawals. You're approaching the knee of the curve where interruptions become increasingly costly. During the acceleration phase, focus on not interfering. Let the compounding work. Fourth, use the 843 pattern to set milestone goals. If you're starting from zero today, your 8-year goal might be $150,000. Your 12-year goal might be $300,000. Your 15-year goal might be $450,000 or more. These milestones give you concrete targets that account for the natural acceleration of compound growth. Fifth, visualize the end point rather than the current position. The person standing at year 3 sees a portfolio that's grown modestly. The same person, mentally projecting forward to year 15, sees a portfolio that's grown dramatically. Which perspective is more likely to sustain motivation through the difficult early years? Focus on where the curve is heading, not where it currently sits. There's another dimension to the 843 rule that rarely gets discussed. It applies not just to investment accounts, but to any compounding system, including your income. Career growth often follows a similar pattern. The first 8 years of a career involve building skills, credibility, and network. The growth feels slow. Raises come incrementally. Promotions require years of waiting. You watch more senior colleagues earning multiples of your salary and wonder if you'll ever catch up. The next 4 years often bring acceleration. Your accumulated skills start commanding premium compensation. Your network starts generating opportunities. Each raise builds on a higher base. The growth rate noticeably increases. The following 3 years can bring explosive progress. Senior roles become accessible. Equity compensation kicks in. Consulting opportunities emerge. Your earning power curves upward with remarkable steepness. Many people quit careers right before the acceleration phase, just like they abandon investment portfolios. They grow frustrated during the slow early years and jump to something new, resetting their clock and never reaching the knee of the curve. Understanding the 843 pattern in both investing and career development helps you recognize that early-stage frustration is normal. It's built into the mathematics of compounding systems. Surviving the early phase is often more important than optimizing it. Let me leave you with a perspective shift that ties this all together. Most people evaluate their investment progress by looking backward. They see how much they've gained and feel disappointed that it's not more impressive. They compare their modest portfolio to the massive numbers thrown around in financial media and feel like they're falling behind. The 843 rule suggests a different approach. Evaluate your progress by looking forward. Ask where the curve is heading, not where it currently sits. Calculate what your current portfolio and contribution rate will produce in 15 or 20 years if left uninterrupted. That forward projection almost always looks dramatically better than the backward reflection. Your current portfolio might seem modest, but its future value, given enough time, is extraordinary. The wealth is already locked in mathematically. You just haven't reached the part of the timeline where it becomes visible yet. The investor who understands this truth behaves differently than the investor who doesn't. They're patient during the early years because they know what's coming. They're aggressive about contributions because they understand the leverage those early dollars will receive. They're unshaken by volatility because they recognize it as a buying opportunity during the accumulation phase. Most importantly, they don't quit. They don't raid their accounts. They don't convince themselves that compounding doesn't work for people like them. They simply wait, contribute consistently, and let the mathematics deliver exactly what it promised. 8 years feels like forever when you're living through it. 4 years feels substantial but achievable. 3 years passes in a blink. And then you're standing on the other side, looking at a portfolio that generates more in returns each year than you could possibly contribute, wondering why everyone doesn't understand what you now understand. Compounding isn't slow, it's backloaded. The magic is real. You just have to survive long enough to see it.